Welcome to Miss Corrigan's unit on classification for Year 7 Science. During this unit you're going to learn lots of things, including why things get classified, how we can identify if something is alive, how organisms such as plants and animals are commonly grouped, how organisms get given scientific names such as Homo sapiens, how scientists can identify an unknown organism using a dichotomous key. You'll get to know some of the most important groups of plants and animals, and you'll get to visit some major groups of animals because we're going to have a zoo visit us later this year. So the first question you probably need to ask is, what is classification? Well, classification is a way of grouping things. You should now be able to see 3 images. Can you group them? Can you classify them? Now you could group these 2 together because they're both actual examples of fruit. Alternatively, you could also choose to group these 2 together because they're both examples of apples. Either way, you're figuring out ways to group things that have similarities into one classification. Let's have a look at another example. Here I have some objects. How can you classify them? You could classify them as toys. You could classify them as trains, or even toy trains. You might be able to recognize some of them and be able to classify them as Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. Regardless of how you identified them, you were still able to identify them and classify them under a certain label. And this is what scientists do with living organisms all of the time. Do you know the names of all these 6 little engines? Who's Gordon? Who's Edward? Who is James? Let me show you how you can identify them using something called a dichotomous key. This is what scientists use to help them identify unknown or unsure of organisms in real life. We're going to identify these 6 little engines using something called a dichotomous key. The word dichotomous is a scientific word meaning cut in 2. When you have a dichotomous key, you have a set of choices, and at each step you must choose between 2 choices, not 3, just 2. These choices are usually based on physical features because sometimes when scientists get specimens, they're already dead, so they can't look at behavioural or physiological features. They can only look at what's actually in front of them, physical things. Let's try it out with Thomas and his little friends. Here is Thomas and some of his friends. Can you see a physical way to split them into 2 groups? Hopefully you quickly realise that some of them are blue and some of them aren't. So the first question we need to ask is the engine blue? When you ask this question, there's only 2 answers. It's either yes or no. Yes, it is a blue little engine, or no, it's not a blue little engine. Either way, we split the group into 2. Okay, we still don't know who is who, so we need to break these groups of 3 even smaller. I'm going to start with the not blue colour, and I'm going to ask a second question, which is whether they are green or not. Let's see what happens. Well, you can probably look at it and see that there's either yes answer or no answer. Yes, there's a green little engine, or No, it's not a green little engine, in which case it is the little engine known as James. So now we've identified James through 2 questions. Is the engine blue? No. Is it green? No. Is the only little red engine? So he's James. Now it's time to figure out the difference between the 2 green engines. One of them has a tender, which is the trailer with coal behind it, and the other doesn't. So we use that as our question. Again, the question has a yes or a no answer. It either does or it doesn't. If the engine does have a tender, it's known as Henry. If it doesn't, it's Percy. So now we have figured out 3 of our 6 little engines. We know James, we know Percy, and we know Henry. Now it's time to figure out these blue engines using a set of either-or questions. When I look at these engines, I can see that 2 of them have a tender and 1 doesn't. So I'm going to ask, does the engine have a tender? And the answer is either yes or no. Again, 2 choices, yes or no. So there's only 1 little blue engine that doesn't have a tender, and well, that's Thomas. But there are 2 engines that do have a tender, so now we have to find a difference between them. When I look at these engines, I can see that they have different numbers of wheels, so that's going to be my next question. Does the engine have 8 wheels? And again, we have a yes or a no answer. If it does, it's Gordon. And if it doesn't, it's Edward. So now you know how to use a dichotomous key to figure out who is who in a set of toy trains. During your next class, I'm going to pull out some scientific equipment and ask you to classify that by making a dichotomous key.